Prologue, the Ashen Distance. Love in the age of unraveling was not tender, it was a blade, sharpened by distance, tested by betrayal. While banners of war gathered and seas boiled with drowned legions, whispers of secret vows carried across ruined halls. The loom did not only weave crowns and wars, it also bound hearts. But in times where gods were silent and prophecies fractured, love itself became rebellion. Chapter 1. The Widow and the Septon. In the vaulted cellars of Metropolis X, where blue candles burned with unnatural light, Septon Vehl of the Silent Flock knelt beside Lady Talva, the widow who tended fire beasts. Her hands, once scarred from chains, traced the lines of his scripture as if they were wounds. "Your faith is ash," she whispered. "And yours is memory," Vehl replied, "but together, perhaps we are flame." Their union was no courtly romance. It was defiance. Each kiss a heresy, each touch a prayer unspoken. Rumors began to stir, that Vehl's sermons grew bolder, that his words of new gods born from mortal love were whispered in the ears of nobles' daughters and soldiers alike. But in the shadows, Oriana's spies listened. Her crimson whispers reached her ruby prince. Love is a thread stronger than fear. Break it, or it will strangle you. Chapter 2. The Princess and the Blade. Far to the east, in the halls of Aether-Zarr, Kaelvar, master of blades, walked the torchlit corridors beside Princess Lira of House Vehlon. Her hair shimmered with salt crystal dust, her voice carrying the rhythm of tides. "You fight with fire," she said softly, "but you do not burn for crowns." "What do you burn for, Sellsword?" Kaelvar paused, his hand brushing the hilt of his twin swords. "For what the loom denied me choice." Their bond was fragile, forbidden by every banner fluttering above them. Yet when she touched his hand, the torches bent as if wind had passed, though no wind stirred. They did not see Serathor watching from the shadows, his ember eyes glowing with jealous flame. In the boy's heart, love was not tender, it was hunger. And hunger, when fed by prophecy, becomes ruin. Chapter 3. The Love That Divides. In the camp of exiles gathered beneath the broken thread banner, Viserion sat by a low fire, his manticore looming like a shadow behind him. The men had sworn to follow his banner, yet their eyes carried doubt, for prophecy alone could not fill empty bellies. That night, a bard from the Salt Coast sang of a tale most dared not speak aloud. A prince who would fall, not to steal or tide, but to love forbidden. The words burned deeper than fire. For among his own, Viserion had hidden a secret. His heart belonged not to a noble maiden, nor to the widows of court, but to a sworn sword, a companion who had ridden with him since exile. They shared glances when the fires dimmed, whispers when men slept. In a world where crowns demanded heirs and houses demanded alliances, their bond was not merely forbidden, it was treason against destiny itself. Yet prophecy does not bend. When dawn came, a rider brought word. The Vehlon envoys march. They speak of oaths, of bonds, of marriages meant to tie the tide to flame. Viserion turned to his companion, eyes hollow with choice. "Would you have me betray the world, or betray us?" The silence that followed was heavier than any crown. Chapter 4. The Fire Jealousy. In the obsidian halls of Aether-Zarr, the night's feast had ended, but the torches still burned. Young Serathor Veltharn, heir of flame, stood apart from the courtiers, his emberlit eyes fixed on a sight that pierced deeper than any blade. Kaelvar, the wandering master of blades, walking side by side with Princess Lira of House Vehlon. Their laughter was soft, private, the sound of a secret not meant for others. Serathor's fists clenched. He was heir to fire, child of prophecy, chosen by the loom itself. And yet in that moment, he felt like nothing but a boy left in the dark. The flames heard his anger. They whispered in his ears, curling around his thoughts like serpents. If she chooses him, take her. If the blade steals her heart, break him. Fire is hunger, and hunger obeys no law. That night, as Kaelvar trained in the silent courtyards, Serathor stepped into the shadows. No servants followed. No guards dared interfere. Only the hiss of torches kept witness. "You fight well," Serathor said, his voice trembling not from fear, but from fury. But blades cannot cut destiny. She is mine. She has always been mine. Kaelvar lowered his sword, surprised. A child's jealousy is not prophecy, boy. The insult cut deeper than steel. Serathor's rage burst. Flames erupted across the courtyard, climbing walls, hissing at the sky. His eyes blazed like molten suns as he screamed. Then let destiny burn with you. The fire lunged, alive, a beast of hunger. Kaelvar's swords met it, glowing white as they clashed with the heat. Sparks became stars, and for a heartbeat the courtyard itself became a battlefield. Above, Princess Lira watched from her chamber, torn between fear and sorrow. She whispered to herself, "Far love is never gentle. It devours." Chapter 5. The Broken Vows. The courtyard still smoldered from Serathor's outburst. Walls blackened, banners scorched, and the night air hung heavy with smoke and shame. Courtiers whispered of the boy's fire, but whispers turned quickly to fear. At dawn, Evangeline Veltharn summoned her son before the court. Her crown shimmered in the light of dying embers, her voice cold as obsidian. "You are heir to flame, Serathor, not its slave," she said. "If fire rules you, then you are no prince. You are ash." The boy's face burned with humiliation. Kaelvar stood silent in the shadows, Lira at his side, her gaze downcast. But the silence did not last. A vassal lord rose, one who had already sworn his loyalty to Veltharn. His words cut like a dagger. "If the heir cannot master himself, how shall he master a realm? Perhaps the loom weaves for another hand to guide us." The hall erupted in murmurs. Some nodded in agreement. Others turned their eyes to Oriana's crimson envoy, standing quietly at the edge of the chamber. And then it happened. That same vassal, drunk with courage or guided by whispers, knelt not to Serathor nor Evangeline, but to Oriana's emissary. "I break my vow," he said. "Let the Ruby Queen weave what Veltharn cannot." The chamber froze. One vow shattered, and with it, others followed. 2 lords swore to Oriana that night. 3 fled into the shadows before dawn. Banners tore, loyalty bled, and in the echoing halls, Oriana's laughter, faint but unmistakable, drifted like smoke through every crack. The broken vows had begun. And in the heart of it, Serathor's jealousy festered not into regret, but into hunger. He swore, silently, that he would take Lira, Kaelvar, and even the throne itself, no matter how many threads he had to burn. Chapter 6. The Kiss of Ash and Salt. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the crash of waves against the basalt cliffs below Aether-Zarr. The sea glowed faintly with phosphorescent light, as though even the drowned dead lingered to watch. In the garden of obsidian statues, hidden from courtiers' eyes, Princess Lira of Vehlon stood with Kaelvar, master of blades. Her veil shimmered with salt crystals, his swords reflected the ember glow of distant fires still smoldering from Serathor's rage. "You should not be here," Kaelvar whispered. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. "If the lords see us." "They will," Lira interrupted, her eyes fierce. "And when they do, let them know I choose you, not their thrones, not their tides, not their prophecies." For a heartbeat, Kaelvar hesitated. He was no prince, no heir, no thread blessed by prophecy. He was a blade, a wanderer with no house to his name. Yet her hand found his, and the world's weight cracked. They kissed beneath the obsidian statues, where fire met salt and salt met steel. It was not tender, it was desperate, defiant, a vow stronger than banners and bloodlines. But in the shadows, Serathor watched. His ember eyes flickered like torches caught in a storm. The flames whispered in his ear. "Take her. Burn him. Love is fire, and fire consumes." Above them, the sea roared louder, as if Vehlon's drowned legion stirred. The loom itself seemed to tremble, for love had crossed into open rebellion, and no prophecy could remain untouched. Chapter 7. Threads of Treachery. The secret garden was never truly secret. By dawn, whispers of Kaelvar and Princess Lira's kiss drifted through Aether-Zarr like wildfire. Servants carried it on trembling lips, merchants turned it into tavern songs, and lords sharpened their knives over the scandal. At the Ember Court, Banners of Veltharn burned brighter than usual, not from pride, but from fury. Lady Evangeline Veltharn sat upon her obsidian throne, eyes cold as basalt, her fingers drumming against the armrest. "Love," she said, voice cutting through silence. "Love is a chain, and chains are made to bind or to strangle." Across the hall, envoys of Vehlon demanded answers. How could their seaborn princess, promised in marriage for alliance, bind herself to a cell's word with no name? One envoy spat upon the marble, declaring it an insult. Another muttered that Vehlon's drowned bells had warned of betrayal, and this was its proof. But the most dangerous voice was not from Vehlon. It was from Oriana, whose whispers slithered into the ears of House Arinder. "See how Veltharn cannot hold its own blood. See how the loom frays. Strike now while love weakens fire." Assassins stirred. Rebels sharpened blades. And in the midst of it all, Kaelvar and Lira's vow of defiance became a weapon wielded by their enemies. Chapter 8. Serathor's Fire. Alone in his chamber, young Serathor stared into the flames. They spoke with voices older than gods, voices dripping with poison and promise. "She has betrayed you," the fire hissed. "She was never yours," Serathor whispered back. "She was always yours. Take her. Burn the cell word. Burn them all." The boy's hands shook, but when he raised them, the flames bent and writhed like serpents eager to strike. His breath reeked of smoke, his eyes no longer human embers swirling in the depths. That night, the great forges of Veltharn roared without command. Torches lit themselves. Statues wept molten tears. And in his sleep, Serathor dreamed of standing upon mountains of ash, Lira chained at his side, Kaelvar's body burning at his feet. When he woke, the fire whispered one final command. "Love is fire, and fire must consume." Chapter 9. The Feast of Broken Vows. The obsidian hall of Aether-Zarr had seen 1,000 feasts, yet none so heavy with silence. Golden goblets sat untouched. Platters of charred venison cooled beneath smoke that rose like incense. The banners of Veltharn and Vehlon hung side by side, but their shadows stretched apart, divided by more than light. At the high table, Evangeline Veltharn forced a smile. Her son Serathor sat beside her, hands folded tightly, eyes smoldering as though a fire lived inside his chest. Across from them, the envoys of Vehlon glared at Kaelvar, the cell's word, who stood unflinching at the edge of the hall. At his side, Princess Lira Vehlon kept her gaze lowered, veil trembling, though her hand sought Kaelvar's like a secret prayer. The feast had been meant to restore unity. Instead, it was a stage for betrayal. The first toast came not from Veltharn, but from a wandering septon cloaked in ash-gray robes, our veil of the silent flock. Raising a cup of black wine, he declared, "The gods have abandoned their loom. Love now weaves its own threads, and it will bind or strangle us all." A murmur rose through the hall. Some laughed. Others muttered curses. Serathor gripped the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. And then, the betrayal. A dagger, small and silver, arced across the feast like a falling star. It struck the goblet before Kaelvar, spilling crimson wine across the table. Gasps echoed. The veiled hands stepped from the shadows, blades flashing, their mirrored masks reflecting the firelight. Chaos erupted. A noble from House Talva fell with a scream, throat cut. A Vehlon envoy shouted accusations of conspiracy. Flames flared unbidden from the torches, bending towards Serathor as though answering his fury. Evangeline rose, her voice cutting through the din. "Enough. This is not a feast, this is war." But her words were drowned in the roar of fire and steel. In that moment, 3 prophecies twisted tighter. That Serathor would wield fire not as a son, but as a god. That Kaelvar's blade would cut more than flesh, it would carve destiny. And that love, forbidden and fragile, would ignite the downfall of kingdoms. The Feast of Broken Vows had begun, and no thread would remain unburned. Chapter 10. Ashes of Desire. Night smothered Aether-Zarr in silence, but within the citadel, silence was never peace. The embers of the feast still glowed in shattered goblets, blood mingled with spilled wine upon the obsidian floor. Princess Lira Vehlon stood alone upon the balcony, her veil torn, her eyes glistening with grief and defiance. Behind her, Kaelvar approached, his twin blades sheathed, but his steps heavy with the weight of betrayal. "We should flee," he whispered. "The walls are no longer walls, they are cages." Lira's lips trembled as she pressed her forehead to his chest. "If we leave, kingdoms will call me traitor. If we stay, they will call me nothing at all." Below, torches flared in the courtyards where Serathor Veltharn walked among the fallen. His gaze lingered on the corpses of the assassins, but also on the broken faces of lords who had once sworn loyalty. His voice was low, but the fire answered it, hissing in unnatural tongues. Point 2. "Mother was wrong," Serathor murmured to the shadows. "Patience is not the sharper blade. Flame is." And as he spoke, a wall of fire blossomed, consuming the banners of Vehlon and casting their sigils into ash. From her throne, Evangeline Veltharn watched in horror. She saw not her son, but something older, something wearing her son's face. And she knew then, the Loom had chosen him, but not for salvation. Meanwhile, hidden in the crypts, Septinar Vale wrote the first lines of a new scripture. "When love defies thrones, crowns crumble to dust. And when crowns fall, gods do not rise, men do." The night ended with 3 fates sealed in silence. Lira and Kaelvar, bound by forbidden love, preparing to flee into exile. Serathor, stepping willingly into the voice of the fire, his childhood burned away. Evangeline, torn between saving her house and destroying her son. Far above, the stars dimmed, as if the Loom itself had snuffed them to weave its next thread in darkness. The episode closed not with words, but with fire devouring the last banner of peace.